Hi everyone, welcome back to Eve Math Tutoring. Today's lesson is on solving quadratic equations by completing the square. So say you're asked to solve the following quadratic equation by completing this square. So there are different ways to solve quadratic equations. One method is by factoring, and another method is by completing the square. So that's the method that we're going to do in this lesson. So say you have this, equation. So the first thing you're going to do is subtract 6 from both sides, and I'm just going to write down the steps because they're not very obvious. So you're going to subtract 6 from both sides, and when you do that, you're going to get x squared minus 8x is equal to negative 6. So subtracting 6 from here and here will cancel out that one, and you'll get a negative 6 here. And then what you're going to do now is complete the square by adding the square of half the coefficient of the x term to both sides. So you're going to complete the square by adding the square of half the coefficient of the x term to both sides. So you're going to take half this. So you're going to take your x coefficient, which is negative 8, divide it by 2 and square it. And that's going to give you negative 4 squared, which is 16. So this is the number 16. This is a 1 and a 6. This is the number that you're going to actually end up adding to both sides of your equation. And this is the completing the square part. So it's always the same step. You take half the number in front of your x value and you square it. So half and then square. Okay, so that's why it's completing the square. So once you do that, you get 16, and then what you're going to do is you're going to add 16 to both sides of the equation. So I'm going to do that in a different color. So you're going to do x squared minus 8x plus 16 equals negative 6 plus 16. And when you do that, you get x squared minus 8x plus 16 is equal to 10. And then over here, you notice that you have a perfect square. So you've got something you can factor. So two numbers that add to negative 8 and multiply to 16 are negative 4 and negative 4. So this can be written as x minus 4 is equal to 10. So x minus 4 all squared is equal to 10. And then if we want to solve that further, we can take the root of both sides. So the root of x minus 4 squared and the root of 10 plus or minus. When you do that, you get x minus 4 is equal to plus or minus root 10. And then you're going to get x is equal to 4 plus or minus root 10, which is approximately equal to 7.16 for the plus one. And then for the minus, you're going to get 0.838. So you get two solutions. Okay, so that's how you would solve by completing the square. So we write down the equation, we subtract the 6 so that it's in this form, and then we take the, which is not really a necessary step, but it's not a necessary step, but it's a little bit easier to see what's in front of x. Then you take half the value in front of your x number, whatever that is, so you divide by 2, square it, you get a number, and you add that number to both sides of your equation. That's what you do here. Okay, so it's the trick is knowing what to add to both sides of the equation. Once you add that number to both sides of your equation, you now end up with this perfect square. I mean, you're not changing the equation because you're doing the same thing to the left side and the same thing to the right side. So you don't actually change it, and then you end up with a perfect square here. And then, so you just think of how to factor this. So you are using factoring in this method. So you think of two numbers that add to -8 and multiply 16, and those two numbers will be -4 and -4. So we would write that as x minus 4 squared. And then on this side, of course, we have the 10 from over here. And then to solve x here, we would take the root of both sides. That would eliminate this square here. And we'd end up with x minus 4, and we'd end up with plus or minus root 10. So then our solution will be x is equal to 4 plus or minus root 10. And then when we work this out on the calculator, we get these two solutions. One is for the 4 plus root 10, and one is for the 4 minus root 10. Okay? I'm going to do another example. Again, the question is to solve by completing the square, and the equation is the following. Okay, so for this one, we want to first get an equation where we've only got an x squared. So we're going to divide the 4 out. So we're going to divide everything by 4 here. So every equation is worked on in a different way. Actually, before we do that, because we're asked to complete this square, let's move the 5 over to the other side just to get it out of our way. 3x is equal to positive 5. Okay, so we're going to divide everything by 4 to get rid of this. So that's going to give us x squared minus 3 over 4x is equal to 5 over 4. So we divided out the 4. And now we're going to see what's in front of our x squared. So now we're going to do the exact same thing as before. What's in front of our x squared, variable? And we've got 3 over 4. So we're going to take half that value. So 3 over 4. We are going to take, the rule is to take half and then square it. So half of 3 over 4, 3 over 4 divided by 2 over 1 is the same as 3 over 4 times 1 over 2, which is 3 over 8. So 3 over 4, half of that is 3 over 8. When we square it, we get 9 over 64. And then what we're going to do is we're going to now add 9 over 64 to both sides of our equation. Okay, so we add 9 over 64 to both sides of the equation. And when we do that, here we end up with a perfect square. So two numbers that add to 3 over 4 and multiply to 9 over 64 are -3 over 8 and -3 over 8. So those two numbers would add to this and multiply to this. So I can rewrite this part as x minus 3 over 8 squared. And if you notice, this number here is always the same as this one. Even in the previous question, if you look carefully, we got -4, and when we did the perfect square, it's -4. So that you can even skip all the other stuff and just figure it out from there, okay? But you do have to make sure this is correct. So you still have to follow the steps, but you will get the same number that you got here. So same thing here, it's actually this number here. So if you're having trouble figuring out how to factor the left side, it's always going to be, now wait a minute, this should be a negative, sorry, negative, and that should be, this is negative, and this should be negative also. So it's always going to be x and then whatever you have here, either minus or plus, okay? So in the other one we had -4, and this one we have -3 over 8, -3 over 8. Okay, so it's always going to be that number. So if, like I said, if you have trouble with factoring this part, you can think of, wait a minute, what did I get here? Well, I got -3 over 8, so it's just x minus 3 over 8. So then you square it. Here we want to get a common denominator, so we're going to multiply the top and the bottom by 16. So that's going to give us 80 over 64 plus 9 over 64. And then we're going to get, so this is 89 over 64, and then this here, okay, we'll just write this step in here. Squared. Now if we want to solve it, we can take the root of both sides. oops. Take the root of both sides here. Okay, and when we do that, we get x minus 3 over 8 is equal to plus or minus root 89 over 64. So then we get x is equal to positive 3 over 8 plus or minus root 89 over, if you want, you can also write it like this. This is the same as this. And when you do that, you get x is equal to 3 over 8 plus or minus root 89 over 8. And those are your two solutions. So you can work this part out on the calculator and this part, and you can get two decimal answers, or you can just leave it this way. Okay, so that would be your solution to that question. So that is solving quadratic equations by completing the square.